Hello, everyone, and welcome to Myth and Magic. I keep thinking myth and makeup because that was originally what I was going to call it, but I'm not doing my makeup while doing these videos because it turns out that I am a terrible multitasker. So, if I pause, that's why. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all of the good things. Whatever you celebrate, I hope that you enjoy your winter. And unfortunately, the holidays got away from me. And the witch lore ended up being really long, so I cut it into two. So we're doing witch story time now. But fortunately, I did become aware of a winter witch that we will be talking about who fits with our story time. So we're going to go through and talk about some individuals throughout history and lore who fit our witch storytelling, and then we will end with a little bit of Christmas stuff. In the beginning, when we were talking about lore, we mentioned the Witch of Endor a couple of times, so I'm going to check on my notes and make sure I'm getting all of this right, and we're going to discuss the Witch of Endor kind of beyond and review what was mentioned before. So the Witch of Endor, fascinating figure from the Bible, okay? So specifically found from the first book of Samuel, chapter 28. Her story is one of the earliest amongst intriguing accounts concerning witchcraft and the history that involved that. And so here's what we've got. King Saul, the first king of Israel, had outlawed all necromancy and witchcraft according to his faith. However, this became a problem for him down the line because he faced the imminent threat of the Philistine army and felt abandoned by God. So he became desperate for guidance. And if you notice my eye twitching, so it looks a little funky, my doctor has me on new sleeping prescriptions, just kind of tested out, and ever since I've been on them, this eye has been constantly twitching throughout the days, so ignore it. But yes, King Saul became desperate for help, and he didn't feel like it was going to be coming from his deity. So in his desperation, Saul disguised himself and sought out the Witch of Endor, hoping she could summon the spirit of the deceased prophet Samuel. Now, despite the risks involved, Saul's need for answers led him to break his own decree against witchcraft. When Saul arrived at the witch's dwelling, he initially hid his true identity. The witch, aware of the king's law, was hesitant and feared for her life, because why wouldn't you? But Saul reassured her that and promised that no harm would come to her for performing the summoning. Now, the Witch of Endor proceeded with the ritual, and to her surprise, she successfully summoned Samuel's spirit. So apparently she didn't think this would actually work. In seeing Samuel, the witch realized the true identity of her visitor and was struck with fear. Samuel's spirit spoke to Saul, delivering a grim prophecy. Samuel chastised Saul for disturbing him and reiterated that God had turned away from him due to his disobedience. He foretold that Saul and his sons would die in battle the next day and that Israel would fall into the hands of the Philistines. The prophecy came true. Saul and his sons were killed in battle, and Israel suffered a significant defeat. This encounter with the Witch of Endor remains a potent story, illustrating the desperation of a king and the power of prophecy and the mysterious abilities attributed to witches. Now, this story has had lasting impact on literature and pop culture, and she is often cited in discussions about necromancy and witchcraft, and her tale continues to be a subject of fascination for scholars, theologians, and storytellers alike. All right, our next witch is Isabel Gowdy. I hope I said all of that correctly. I apologize if I did not. Isabel was a Scottish woman who lived in the 17th century and is one of the most well-documented figures in the history of witchcraft. Isabel lived in Aldern, near Nyren, Scotland. I apologize. My pronunciation's probably all over the place. Little is known about her personal life, including her exact age or social status, and she was likely a cotter's wife, which means she was a tenant farmer. In 1662, Isabel made 4 separate confessions over a period of 6 weeks. These confessions were remarkable because they were obtained without the use of torture. We talked previously how torture was a big thing in getting the Salem witches to confess that they were witches, even though torture. Were they? Probably not. Her detailed testimony provided one of the most comprehensive insights into European witchcraft folklore at the end of the witch hunt era. So what were her confessions? They included a variety of fantastical and vivid details. So first, pact with the devil. She claims to have made a pact with the devil, renouncing Christianity and receiving a new name, Janet. She also described her involvement with a coven of 13 witches, including activities like flying to coven meetings, spoiling crops, and stealing corn. I don't think you need to have magic to steal corn. Technically not to spoil crops. You could wreck them in many different ways. But apparently this was what she was doing with her coven. Isabel spoke of meetings with the king and queen of the fairies, learning to fly by climbing beanstalks and shouting specific phrases, and transforming into animals like hares and cats. She also detailed rituals involving the devil, including being rebaptized with her own blood and attending sabbats where the devil would whip them if displeased. The Confessions of Isabel became a keystone for a new wave of witch persecutions in Scotland during the reign of Charles II, so 1660 through 1685. And while there is no official record of her execution, some stories suggest she was hanged and then burned. Her confessions have been used in various works of literature, music, and art, including a symphony by Scottish composer James Macmillan. Isabel's confessions became prominent in kind of shaping the idea of the modern witch. It provided a detailed look into the beliefs and practices of witches during that time, and her narrative continues to be studied and debated by historians and scholars, and she is commemorated in various cultural works. Isabel's confessions offer a unique and vivid glimpse into the world of witchcraft and societal fears, and even superstitions of the 17th century. Her story is a testament to the complex and often tragic history of witch trials. Our next witch is very close to our Scottish friend Isabel, Alice Keeter. She was a notable figure in the history of witchcraft in Ireland, and her story is one of the earliest recorded witch trials in the country. Alice Keeter or Keitler, I'm not really sure. She was born around 1260 in Kilkenny, Ireland, to a wealthy Flemish merchant family. She was known for her beauty, intelligence, and independence, which made her a controversial figure in her community. Alice was married 4 times to William Outlaw, Adam Labund, Richard de Val, and Sir John Lepore. In 1324, Alice was accused of witchcraft and heresy by her stepchildren and other local residents. The accusations included denying the power of Christ and the church, sacrificing animals to a demon lover named Robert or Robin, son of Art, consulting demons for advice on witchcraft, engaging in sexual relationships with an incubus named Robin Artisan, and holding coven meetings and burning candles in the church at night without permission. And if you ask me, stepchildren, hopefully they love you, you get along, but I don't know I don't know what the relationship was. It may have been that they didn't like her and were just, the whole scapegoating thing where they would use witchcraft as a way to get rid of someone that they didn't like. Or maybe they loved her and then thought she was doing witchcraft. You don't know. I can't find it. There's no detail on how all of that went down. Now, the Bishop of Ossory, Richard de Ledrede, played a significant role in Alice's trial. A zealous Franciscan friar trained at the papal court in Avignon, Ledrede was determined to root out heresy in his diocese. He brought formal charges against Alice and her alleged accomplices, including her servant Petronilla de Ma. You know, this might have just been a very sexually free woman, and people didn't like the way she was acting, and they just wanted to get rid of her. Alice Alice managed to escape before the trial concluded, likely fleeing to England or Flanders. Her servant, Petronilla, was tortured and forced to confess to the crimes. Petronilla was eventually executed by being burned at the stake on November 3rd, 1324. Very unfortunate for dear Petronilla. And often, we talked about this with our vampires, how the servants got punished for what their master may or may not have done. Alice's trial is considered a precursor to later European witch trials. Her case highlighted the intersections of local politics and personal vendettas, children, people who don't like that you are sexually active, whether you were married or not. It doesn't say if she was currently wed at the time or if this was stepchildren from a deceased husband, etc., etc. It also shows off religious fervor, as we can see with the bishop. The trial also underscored the dangers faced by women who accumulated wealth and power in a male-dominated society. So lots of reasons why she might have been singled out for witch hunting. And as far as I know, her story is actually a significant part of Irish legal and cultural history, reflecting the complexities of witchcraft, accusations, and the social fears of the time, which now brings us to Catherine Monvoisin, also known as La Voisin, who was a notorious French fortune teller, prisoner, and alleged sorceress who lived during the late 17th century. Catherine was born Catherine de Shays around 1640 and came from a modest background. She married a jeweler named Antoine, we're going to call him Andy Monvoisin. But after his business failed, she turned to fortune telling and other occult practices to support herself and her family. Catherine became well known in Paris for her fortune telling abilities, offering services such as chiromancy, which is palm reading, and face reading. Her business gradually expanded to include the sale of aphrodisiacs, poisons, and purported magical services. She also provided abortions, which was a significant part of her practice. So she's now also including things that are a little less harmless than palm and face reading, and very controversial. Catherine became a central figure in the infamous affair of the poisons, a scandal that rocked the French aristocracy in the late 17th century. She was accused of organizing black masses and providing poisons to clients who wished to commit murder. Her network of fortune tellers and poisoners was believed to have been responsible for numerous deaths, with estimations ranging from 1,000 to 2,500 victims. And honestly, this reminds me a little bit. I like true crime podcasts. I can't do the research. It's too much for me. But it reminds me of, what is her name? The Aqua Tofana. So did you know that Mozart, drama queen, he started a rumor, allegedly, that he was poisoned with aqua tofana. It hasn't been proven that this is true, but the fact that he started this rumor himself is pretty fun. And now we can talk a little bit about her notable clients. Catherine was employed by some of the most highest members of French society, such as Olympia Mancini, Comtesse de Soissons, and Francois Henry de Montmorency, Duke de Luxembourg, And one of her most famous clients was Madame de Montespan, the mistress of King Louis XIV. I don't know what number that is. I have never been good with Roman numerals. Who allegedly sought Catherine's help to eliminate her rivals. Unfortunately, Catherine, or maybe fortunately, I guess it depends. You know the poison things a little. She was arrested on March 12th, 1679, and she was imprisoned at Vincennes. During her trial, she was accused of numerous crimes, including witchcraft, murder, and heresy. She was found guilty and sentenced to death, which happened by burning February 22nd, 1680. Her daughter, Marguerite Montvoisin, also faced trial and was sentenced to life imprisonment. So she may have been helping. All right. Our next witch is from Salem, Tituba. She was a woman of mystery whose name became synonymous with the infamous Salem witch trials, which is interesting because I have never actually heard of her. Her life story is complex and includes cultural intersections and has historical significance and sheds light on the fear and prejudices of the 17th century in New England specifically. Tituba was born in the West Indies, likely in Barbados in the late 17th century. She was of mixed African and Native American descent, which already set her apart in the predominantly white Puritan society of Salem. She was enslaved and brought to Massachusetts by Samuel Parris, a minister, and his wife Elizabeth. In 1689, they settled in Salem Village, where Tituba became an integrate yet invisible part of the household. In the winter of 1692, the Parris household was thrown into turmoil. Elizabeth Parris, known as Betty, and her cousin Abigail Williams began to exhibit strange behaviors, including fits, convulsions, and outbursts. Doctors were baffled and could find no physical cause for their symptoms. Pressured to explain the inexplicable, the girls accused Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne of witchcraft. Unlike the other two women who vehemently denied the accusations, Tituba confessed to practicing witchcraft. Her confession was likely coerced through fear and the hope of leniency, which unfortunately was not actually given ever, as far as I have seen. Maybe there have been cases, but as far as I have heard in the stories, if you admitted to being a witch, you were done. She wove a vivid narrative of encounters with the devil, describing how he appeared to her in the form of a tall man from Boston who bade her to sign his book. She spoke of seeing strange animals, riding sticks, and participating in dark rituals. Her confession, filled with lurid details and fantastical elements, only fueled the hysteria that was currently happening. It provided the townspeople with a tangible enemy and seemed to confirm their worst fears. Tituba's admission spread like wildfire, prompting a wave of accusations that engulfed Salem. Tituba was imprisoned, along with many other accused of witchcraft. Her detailed confession and subsequent testimonies were pivotal in the trials as they supported the spectral evidence used to convict numerous individuals. Interestingly, despite her central role in the trials, Tituba was never executed. So here's the first one. I didn't think it was likely that she would be spared, but in this case, she was. After a year in prison, she was sold to an unknown person, and records of her life thereafter are scarce. Now, Tituba's story has endured as a symbol of the intersection of race, gender, and power in colonial America. Her forced confession under duress highlighted the brutal realities of slavery and the scapegoating of marginalized individuals. In popular culture, Tituba has been depicted in various ways, from Arthur Miller's The Crucible to Maryse Condé's novel I, Tituba, Black Witch of Salem. Her legacy serves as a poignant reminder of the dangers of mass hysteria, as all of these stories do. There's also prejudice and the human capacity for both fear and resilience. The Salem witch trials, with Tituba's story at the heart, remained a cautionary tale about the perils of scapegoating and the destructive power of fear. So, unfortunately, all of these stories include individuals from life or became like warning tales. What do they call them? Tales of warning concerning all of these characteristics and aspects. Some of them probably should have been dealt with in a legal manner because unaliving people, not such a great thing. Others, like the many accused, who really the idea that Tituba may or may not have actually been a witch, she probably wasn't. And fortunately, she was spared. The fact that she remained a slave and that was her life is very sad and tragic. Okay, so now we're going to leave the real life historical examples of witches, whether they are of more folklore tradition, mythology, or were real people like some of these women were. We're going to go into some mythology that is really fun and Christmassy. Merry Christmas. Here's our Christmas story for the December. Our more, what I would like to do is December, we will discuss more wintry, holiday-ish, mythological creature stories. Like, I want to do the Yule Cat, and right now we're going to do Grilla, who is an ogre. I love that this ogre is a witch. All right. Leaving reality. Grilla, which I think is how you pronounce it, is a fascinating figure from Icelandic folklore and is often associated with Christmas traditions. Grilla is depicted as a terrifying ogress or witch, or both, with multiple tails. She's often described as having a grotesque appearance with horns, a long tail, or many, and has a ferocious appetite for misbehaving children. Her name translates to growler, which adds to her fearsome reputation. The earliest reference to Grilla dates back to medieval Icelandic sagas, where she was portrayed as a general threat lurking in the mountains. Over time, her mythos became intertwined with Yuletide traditions, solidifying her role as a Christmas figure. According to Christmas folklore, Grilla descends from her mountain lair during Christmas to hunt for children who have misbehaved throughout the year. She is said to cook the children she captures into a stew. This horrifying narrative was likely used as a cautionary tale to encourage good behavior among children during the long, dark Icelandic winters. And I can only imagine what kind of shenanigans kids could get up to in that kind of environment. Lots of nonsense, lots of bad weather. So stay close to home, be good, I'm assuming was the general message. So Grilla is the mother of the Yule lads. I'm not going to try and pronounce the Icelandic word for that. I'll put her right here. These are mischievous figures who visit Icelandic homes during the 13 days leading up to Christmas. Each Yule lad has a unique personality and prank, from stealing food to slamming doors. Grilla's third husband, name Lepalwi. There's a lot of accent marks on some of these vowels, and I do not know how to use them. Her husband is usually depicted as lazy and subservient, and together they own a monstrous cat known as the Yule Cat, which I would like to talk about in the future in more detail. This cat devours anyone who does not receive new clothing for Christmas. So, get new clothes and be decked out, or you'll get eaten by a giant cat. In modern depictions, Grilla's monstrous aspects are often toned down for younger audiences. She remains an endearing symbol of Icelandic folklore, embodying the darker side of Christmas. So there's not only Krampus, there's the ogress, witch, Grilla with many tails and 13 sons. Her legend continues to captivate audiences. I actually have never heard of her until this week, and is passed down through generations. Grilla's story is a testament to the rich and imaginative storytelling traditions of Iceland, blending caution with creativity to create memorable and chilling character. If you would like to see Grilla in pop culture interpretations, there are not many that I can find. I'm hesitant to mention one in case people want to see this film and be surprised. So I'll save it for the end. That's what I'll do. And I'll let you know spoilers, okay? But there's also The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Grilla appears in the Christmas special of this TV series, portrayed as a witch rather than a giantess, or I guess she can sometimes be interpreted as a troll. This version of Grilla has a fondness for gin instead of her traditional stew of children. So toned down. There's also satirical references. Grilla has been humorously referenced in various media, including the article by The Onion, which jokingly blamed her for the 2010 eruptions. Additionally, the satirical blog Stuff Monsters Like posted an article titled Monsters Like a Holiday Stew, referencing Grilla's appetite for small children. So these are just, you know, a couple of things that you can find. She's not been used a whole lot, but here's the spoiler. She's in this movie. If you don't want to know, Red One. I learned about her through Red One. That is why we have a Christmas witch in our witch storytelling video here. My husband and I watched it recently with some of our friends, and I thought it was fun. I had never heard of her. It was cool. So this is just a brief story of some of the witches throughout history, and of course, so we can be a bit holiday-ish. Grilla also we have included. She's interesting and fun. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about the witches throughout history. We are going to take some figures and do a in-depth video about them. Morgan Le Fay for sure. I mentioned her previously. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a fantastic holiday season, whether you celebrate or you don't celebrate. I hope you have love in your life, and if you don't, I give some to you. Have a wonderful season, and I will see you guys next year. I'm grateful for you all. Thank you so much. If you would like to hear more fantastical tales, learn more lore of our mythological environment worlds, go ahead and follow. Make sure you hit the notification button. But if you just want to come in every once in a while and hang out, that's cool too. Have a great day. I love you all. Bye.